stripped of his custom and culture and became an alien in a strange land with a hard-fisted tyrant ruling over him that some historians suggest was the most wicked man that ever lived, and Saddam Hussein claimed to be the incarnate of Nebuchadnezzar. I just would wonder if it would have been possible for that boy to have gotten bitter. I wonder if it would have been possible for that boy to fall into an abyss of despair that there's no bottom. Think, why did this happen to me? Why don't you show up in my narrative? Come on, why don't you step into my life? I got to remind somebody, in the midst of all the hell you're going through, with a king Nebuchadnezzar stripping you of your identity, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords has everything under control. He knows the end from the very beginning. But he was carried into exile. His parents may have been executed. He perhaps became an orphan. He perhaps was emasculated. He did have to learn new customs and culture and language and so forth. And they even stripped him of his identity and says, "Thou wilt be Belteshazzar." I just want to know if there are any people in this house tonight who have weathered some storms and fought the battles, and you're seemingly coming out on the losing end. You're getting frail and weak, and you're just losing your constitution, and your resolve is weakening, and you don't have the tenacity, you don't possess the resilience to get up and keep going. So you throw in the towel and say, God is not in my life. There's no way. Or you can be like Daniel, stand up and say, you took my mama, you took my pop, you took my masculinity, you took my name, you took my custom, you took my culture, you took everything from me, but you can't touch me. Do you have a core to you? Do you have convictions? Do you have something in you that is unnegotiable, that the devil can't take from you? When your friends and contemporaries will say it would be foolish for you to dream, it would be foolish for you to hope, can you stand up and say, I'm going to dream in spite of, and I'm going to hope in spite of, because I know I have no name. I know that I have no parents, and I don't have this and I don't have that, but I still know that behind my scene, he hasn't showed up yet, but the God of my narrative is about to step in and show himself mighty. I'm looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of my faith, and I might not have my own name, but I'm still a child of destiny. God has something for me. I can't see it, but he has something for me. My ship doesn't have a rudder, but I'm sailing. We walk by faith, not by sight. Have you got it, Kayla? Have you got it, Dave? Have you got it, Mayor? Have you got it, Brother Anthony? Have you got it? Something, this moral compass, this thing within you. You see, when the Duke of Windsor moved into the palace of King Richard V, his father told him, don't forget who you are. To my wonderful African American friends, my brothers and my sisters, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. Many years ago in the slavery days, well, there were those who were downtrodden and in despair and depressed. In those hot cotton fields, there was one young African-American boy who stood proud. He never was told to do the job. He not only did the job, he did extra. No matter what they said to him, no matter what expletive they called him or derogatory term they pinned on him, they could not bring down his spirit. And somebody asked him, one slave master asked the other master, what is it about that man? He said, he's 6,000 miles from home. He'll probably never see his homeland again. He's a slave. He suffers discrimination. But back where he comes from in Africa, his father was the chief of the tribe. That boy was told he's royalty. He might be working for a white man in the cotton fields. He might be under the whip of the slave, but he knows who he is. I'm just wanting to know, can depth or height or things past or things present, can angels, can tribulation, can persecution, can sickness, can divorce, can it take it from you? Paul said, I'm persuaded that neither height nor depth, in all these things, I maintain my identity. I am more than a conqueror through Christ. I know sometimes you see me bloodied and bruised. I know sometimes I stagger and limp. I know sometimes my wounds are visible, but just leave me alone because I know who I am. I should have known better not to bring 9 pages in here. That man can do it in a masterful way, and I envy him for being able to do it. It just doesn't do me a look of good. But you see, be very careful when you're vulnerable. When you're not sure of your identity or when they're trying to strip it from you. When you're going through the mill, when they're peeling it off you. Be very careful because you could perhaps become gullible. And that's the next part of the narrative. When Nebuchadnezzar said, we're going to have a 3-year internship. And I'm going to give some of these exiles who are nobodies a chance to be somebody. They're going to get to stand in my court, i.e. cupbearer. Nobody was closer to the king than the cupbearer. What a privileged position. For heaven's sakes, as the world tries to peel your identity from you, do not let an insecurity attach itself to you where you feel like you're worthless. And when the king says, I'm going to give you the opportunity of a lifetime, you can get to stand in my court and be one next to me. Don't say little old me. You got to remember in all these things. He says, what we're going to do is we're going to let them eat the king's meat. Not threatening, not caustic or austere. But be careful. The devil will not always roar like a lion. He's more subtle than any beast. This non-threatening invitation was given. Eat the king's meat. Eat like a king. Think like a king. From nowhere to somewhere. Daniel, you don't need a hope. You ought not be dreaming. You emasculated, exiled, poor example of the male species. You ought to just give up right now and follow suit and conform. But there are some people that possess a tenacity you can't take from them. You can't bargain it away from them. It's internal. You can change their name, but they know who they are. You can carry them away captive, but they're going to remain free. And you can think that your kingdom is all of that, but they know one day God's going to get you at your most vulnerable point, because even kings have to sleep. Even kings have to dream. God knows how to get that king who's messing with you. God's going to move in your darkness. God's going to move in the wee hours of your nighttime when you're all by yourself missing your mom and your dad. When you're there and they don't even call you. Read the Bible. Daniel 1, Daniel 2, Daniel 3. Daniel who was Belshazzar. Daniel who was Belteshazzar. Daniel who was Belteshazzar. But here's a young boy who says, you can't take it from me. God's moving in on your enemy. Your enemy is going to become vulnerable. He thinks he's all that. He thinks that his situation is in